All right, we are live. So good morning, everyone. This is Mike Koss. I'm a board member of Reskill Americans, and we're here for today for our sixth town hall. And or I think we're going into like the fifth week of like actual course instruction in the courses this week, and we still have nearly 1,000 people working away on different courses, and it's very exciting. I know we've had some bumps along the way. We've added a lot more resources in terms of helping people answer questions. So hopefully things are going well for most people. I know we've had some hiccups, but we appreciate your patience too and support, and we're doing everything we can to kind of help things go as smooth as possible. So do let us know if you are having problems, and we will try to address everything that we can. So this morning I'm also joined by Juan, and he's our program manager. You want to say good morning?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joanne. I've been interacting with you all on Slack and all other channels. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And today we do have a special guest for this town hall today, and we are going to be talking to David Ortiz, and he's had a long career in video game and gaming industry, and so I think that's a kind of a branch of software development that most software developers don't really get exposed to, and I think there's a lot of curiosity from people about what that kind of career would be like, how it would differ from other careers. But we're gonna find out from David how he got his start, how he got into that, and so welcome, David.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here today.
Yeah. So why don't I know you were at Microsoft. I don't know, maybe you can take us back to like, what was your first kind of career, what your first kind of career position, and how you got into just software development in general.
Yeah, so I was going to school, actually I was at San Jose State, and I was going to school, and I had an opportunity to get a testing internship at Atari Games. It was a temporary job. It paid $4.75 an hour. I was still in college. And I got this job at Atari Midway, and I think it was Atari Time Warner back then. And I got in there, and they basically turned people over every few weeks, every few months. And we happened to be building a hockey game called Wayne Gretzky 3D Hockey. And I started on that as a tester and working on some other things, San Francisco Rush and Area 51 and all kinds of.
So are you like a game tester, like a user experience tester? Like what kind of testing?
User experience. I mean, really it was, you've played a lot of video games, you can document what's happening when there's a problem. And that was my entry. And just from, persistence, opportunity, call it luck as well. Within about, 4 months or so, I got moved to a permanent role. And then from there, I got moved into production, and then I was doing audio design actually, because I had a background in music. And then I moved into game design, and I blinked, and 10 months had passed. I moved into a well-salaried role, and I was still 19 in school, and shipped my first game.
Wow.
To be a part of, and it got Game of the Year on the Nintendo 64. So I was, I felt like, hey, maybe this is a career for me. And I continued to, stay in production and design at Atari for a few more years. Then I went to Microsoft, and at Microsoft, they were starting to build up the Xbox platform. It hadn't come out yet. They were in the process of building. I got there just at the end of '99.
Okay, so you were really early in what Microsoft getting into gaming.
Yeah, well, I was actually technically the first game designer ever hired by Microsoft. So the first person to hold the title. So, for me, I was this hybrid. They weren't, I wasn't a PM, and I wasn't an engineer. I had a balance of mix of skills, but I was a creative. And so I got to, really help pioneer that role. We did a game called NFL Fever, did very well. And we also did the first game ever on the Xbox Live platform, which was fun. And, what I learned, one of the things I learned at Microsoft was just how structured software development was compared to coming in. No knock on a place like Atari, but when I worked at Atari, there were still no, and I'm not that old. We're talking like Atari with Pong and things like that. We're talking,
Yeah. That's my generation.
Yeah, that's your generation. So we were still doing, console gaming and things like that. And still coin operated games as well. But when I was there, it was really, there was no schools for that. People kind of learned. You had a level of intelligence and understanding of computers, and then tools were being built as they went. Unreal didn't exist. Unity didn't exist. You just kind of in there figuring it out.
And those are the kind of game engines that a lot of developers start with right nowadays, right? Unity and
right. So now, if you want to jump into the games industry, one of the first things people ask you is, do you know how to use Unity? Do you know how to use Unreal? And then we go into all the different types of project management approaches, and then we just kind of dig in if you're an engineer, we dig into your overall software.
Oh, you went mute.
Yep. Sorry about that. Okay. Your overall software development approach. But when I got to Microsoft, it was, this company that had been building best software in the world. In fact, Mike, you'll appreciate this. What they told me at Microsoft when they were recruiting me was they said, you'll retire at 30. It wasn't, you're laughing. It wasn't that far-fetched, man, at the time. I happened to get there right before DOJ and all the way through it. So,
yeah.
But what I learned at Microsoft was, structure. And just ways of really approaching organized development. And so we were able to get things done there. Even with folks who did not have a ton of game development background, they just had a really structured software approach and bringing some artists and some other engineers who were just sharp. And we ended up, with I think our first game we shipped with a team of like 12 people. And we got it out in like 9 months, and it did really, really well. So I got to like a big leap in overall just software development approach and structure. And
it sounds like you actually probably brought with you some skills to Microsoft that they didn't really know about either. Because I think as a, Microsoft getting into gaming, they were not a game studio before. They didn't know like how to successful game studios were structured. I imagine you kind of brought some of that knowledge into the company as well.
Yeah, it was fun, man. There was definitely an exchange of, it was myself, a guy named Pat Cook. We probably were two of the people who had like the most traditional game company experience. And then Ed Freeze, who had been, going out and acquiring different companies and doing different licensing deals. And it was just an interesting time, man. But, we were learning a lot from external. We were bringing some different things to the mix. And then we had, Microsoft's kind of structured support. It went well. And then I did that for about a good 4 years. And then from there, I went to EA Sports, and I worked on a product called Madden NFL. And I did that for several years in a lead producer role for them. And we had a good run. We had some, several Game of the Year awards. We did, a good chunk of business. It was fun, to make a game where people are, that as soon as it's done the next morning, it's out there. Christmas morning, everyone's buying it, everyone's playing it. We did all kinds of insane press, popular culture stuff around that product. I did that for several years.
Now that's a job title that like maybe seems a little bit foreign to me. Producer, like we in traditional like software development teams, we don't have a person that's designated as a producer or even like a lead designer or something like that. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how that might be different than
sure.
like.
So at Microsoft was interesting. So Microsoft, my title was lead designer, and then we had a PM. So, and we had our group project manager was always encouraging. Like I was supposed to be like the crazy, director, right? Who was supposed to just ask for everything and always upset and everything. Like I'd be encouraged to do this at Microsoft, right? It's like, you have to ask for more, you have to push them, just be creative, let them worry about it. And then that doesn't suit my personality. I mean, I don't mind getting what I want, of course, but I'm more diplomatic than that. So we had this structure. But when traditional game companies at the time, and a lead producer, senior producer, project lead, I had the people who were the PMs and the EA, we called them dev directors, who managed each individual silo of engineers, artists, et cetera. Art director reported into me. And then I dealt with marketing separate, and they had their own marketing department, and they were awesome to work with. And then, just this but you're responsible for shipping the product and making sure it came out at good quality. And so that role there is overseeing the creative as well as making sure the project ships on time. And then also, wherever you need to help dig in and help solve technical solutions, but you don't end up, at least for me personally, when I was kind of coming up through the ranks, at different places, you did different level of hands-on coding and different level of hands-on design. And then when you get to, a certain level of responsibility, it's just making sure you're staffing properly and that everything is moving and, your vision is set and your next vision is set and everything that kind of needs, especially with an iterative product like Madden, we would ship that thing. And then, 9 months later, we were shipping another. And so there's a lot that goes into that, but the role compared to a traditional PM role is more of a hybrid of design and management.
Okay.
In that responsibility. And it's fun, I think, when people are looking to come into the software industry to realize that you can have an exposure to code and you can have an exposure to the tech, but at the end of the day, you still need people who can drive the vision, drive the creative, as well as, real people management skills. Dealing with a bunch of creative people. And, the reason why a lot of creative people come into the game space is because they don't necessarily, and this is no knock, because we know guys who've gone from leading Excel to, escaping the games, right? It's not, it's not a knock of, kind of, Salesforce type of development or, just different types of software. But what games allows you to do is constantly look at, the what if, or look at things that are out there. Like we used to always have fun with this when we were developing sports games. We'd get kind of slack from people who were working on shooters or things like that. And they would say, well, we're building a game in space. There's no rules, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but no one's ever been to this fictitious planet. So they can't look at it and tell you it's wrong. But everybody's watched a game of football or soccer or tennis and tell you where all your flaws are because they know what to expect.
Yeah.
So with this, limited tool set, which keeps getting better and better and better. But back then, it was like a chisel and a hammer, man, trying to figure out a way to replicate 22 people running on the field with artificial intelligence. It actually is a really good springboard for looking at massive AI projects and bringing something together, massive art projects.
Yeah. And I was just thinking that there's like two things that I think you guys were dealing with. One is like the ship date, like your Christmas is like a huge season for the gaming industry, I believe. So like I imagine like you kind of like can't slip a month and just have a small problem with that.
No, what's funny is now, and we're working on some, so just a little more to that point. So I went from there, and that's, it was Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 stuff. I went from there. I moved over to Sony. I was creative director of North American sports for Sony. We were doing all kinds of new stuff there. I went to Warner Brothers. It was a studio head and EP for kind of action titles and movie-based IP. And then I actually went out to Abu Dhabi for a few years and helped their government oversee their entrance into game publishing.
Wow.
And by developers, all over the world. And we did invest in as well in technology and gaming and different stuff. And I came back and I started my own companies, both in fantasy sport and real money gaming, and then kind of software development consulting. And now we have, as a pretty innovative product, really pushing, technology and what it can do with sports simulation and how it intersects in this universe. But the consistency throughout all of it, when we're talking about things has been, you have to ship, right? You have to get products out, but you can't just get anything out and call it done. It has to be done at a certain level of quality. So, you're constantly looking at the state, and up until, the last 5 to 9 years, you had to have that product pretty much done. When it was a cartridge, it was done. There was no patches, there was no updates. Unless it was
right. Yeah. It goes out the door.
It goes out the door. It's in somebody's hands, and it's either going to be something they hate, and it's going to be a landfill where they're, digging up a ground.
Yeah. I remember hearing that dreaded word recall. Like that was the thing that was our boogeyman. We'd go to sleep at night. Right. Go like, oh no, was that bug bad enough to recall the product? And that was a huge problem back then.
Yeah. Well, you find yourself, getting to the end of a project, and it's just this nonstop triage, right? So you do all this work, and then it's just, you spend these time in these committees trying to land the plane, we call it, right? So how can you get down to there's no critical bugs? What can be acceptable? All this energy and time. But now what I've seen happen, there's just been this pivot in the industry where people are like, well, we can patch it. So, digitally, right? Because before, you couldn't necessarily patch it if at all. And it was a problem for people to get a patch. now I've seen where people are like, okay, well, we'll just get it out the door and then we'll worry about patching it later. And it has come back to haunt some dev teams. I won't call anyone out, but
okay.
you can just
right.
search, by games that have had these massive budgets and these expectations.
Yeah.
And because they had to get it out the door, or they felt they had to get it out the door, you got hundreds of millions of dollars wasted. But it's just interesting to see the mentality shift, because they're like, well, everyone's connected anyway. So by the time they connect online, we ship the thing at this date. By the time they connect and download it, we'll already have the patch up. And it's just, it's a different mentality.
Yeah, that is true. Like that has totally changed. I know with the ideas like continuous integration and, most dev teams nowadays are just on a continuous cycle, just pushing stuff every day, things like that, rolling back if it's not working, that sort of thing.
Hopefully. Everyone wants metrics, right? So everyone wants to get into the market as quickly as they can, see if something's adopted. And if it is, then they want to pump more into it. And so you kind of get the foundation of an experience now more, and then you see where it goes, as opposed to getting the full-blown experiences in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But
I think of like Minecraft and just how that thing kind of changed, I think, everyone's idea of like, how do you launch a game? It's like that thing was in beta for whatever, a year and a half or 2 years or something, and people were just like loving the experience of being part of the development of the game, giving feedback to Mojang about what they liked, and what a super hit it turned out to become.
Yeah, well, the biggest one ever. I mean, I think what's cool about that too is that they built something they knew was good, and they were smart enough to know that we just keep this beta tag on this thing. Our expectations are here.
Yeah.
And then we were able to develop this great relationship with the community, and and actually listen and continue to develop something that's become pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. I remember my son and I had but a lot of his friends. He was in college at the time when 1.0 came out, and we had a big LAN party at our house, with to get a bunch of guys together and play the 1.0 version. It was a big celebration to go try to beat the game in one night, and we were all working together to play Minecraft. So it kind of became like a social event too, that launch.
Yeah, that's where, and that's really was one of the coolest things about this type of software. And again, not to knock any other kinds of software, but when you're building something, if you've done a good job, people are actually they're going to bond over it. They're going to spend time over it. It's going to be their social break, their outlet. It's going to be the place where they actually have a really good time. And ideally, things are pretty accessible as well across kind of costs, especially with free-to-play models. So it's fun knowing that it's two things. It's the pressure knowing like you can either ruin someone's fun, it's like they spend all this time, energy to get on this game, and then this game's buggy. You're like, okay, that's not going to be fun for people. And at the same time, so if you do it right, people are going to spend hours and hours, man, just creating memories, which is pretty satisfying.
Yeah, I was thinking that was the other point I was thinking about. What really struck me as different about what you do and what I've traditionally done is, what is the bar for, not just necessarily quality, but what are you shooting for? I think the most of the software I've written, I'm pretty happy as long as people aren't very annoyed by using it. It's just like, they need it for their job. They have to do some work. If it works and they don't lose their data and they're not really annoyed by the experience, you're probably got a successful product. But with a game, people actually have to love that. They have to they want to spend their free time doing that.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing that's happening in gaming right now is it's almost like the same as film and television content now. There's so much content. People have become very comfortable consuming kind of niche content and creating it as well. So we had the opportunity for people to be able to express themselves and create something that maybe 5 years ago you wouldn't have been able to get funded or build or be able to find an audience for. But just like Netflix and Hulu have made it possible for people to find exactly what they're into when they're into, games is now provided the ability for people to have the kind of experience they want, and every game does not have to be the same game. And so one of the things that's exciting for me, and then talking to our panel and our group of people that are coming through Reskill Americans, is that there's an opportunity to have a more diverse set of voices coming into ultimately creating games. And it's no different than when you get a more diverse set of people making music. When you get a more diverse set of people making movies, you're going to get different experiences from their perspective, and you don't know what you're going to end up with. So I feel like as games begins to be, and we're working hard at it, as the games begins to be more and more of a diverse business, the content and the experiences are just going to be, we don't even know where we're going. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So what your current career, like you said you started a company, what's going on with you right now?
Yeah. So, I went down the path of entrepreneurship several years ago. I built a company in the fantasy sport and real money gaming space and sold that. And then I kind of stepped back because the laws changed. And so I wanted to, make sure we're on the right side of the law. We built up these businesses, and they made changes and sweeping changes on law in the US in 2018, making fantasy sport and real money gaming legal throughout the US. So, and there's, we looked at it and we said, well, we want to build something. And the company's called SimWin Sports. We want to build something where we can entertain people all the time. So if someone wants to, again, just like Netflix and Hulu, any time of day you want to, you can turn on, you can turn on the computer or the television and you can watch, you just want to watch, stand-up comedy and watch Dave Chappelle for 15 hours, you can. If you want to watch romantic comedy, you can. You want to watch drama, whatever it is. And so with, just about every genre of entertainment right now, it's digital and it's bingeable, meaning you can do it wherever you want, whenever you want, as long as you want. But sports, that isn't the case, right? Because, there's the humans on the other side of it. And, people have to rest, they have to sleep, there's seasonality of sport. You can't make LeBron James go and shoot a jumper at 3 a.m. because you feel like playing fantasy sport. He's not going to get out of bed for you, I promise. So instead, what we decided to do was build out a bunch of sports simulations that run as as an ongoing league. So anytime you want to turn on a game, you can watch a game of competition. And then beyond that, the whole ecosystem that sits there, fantasy sports. We're not a betting company, by the way. We do license our data to those kinds of companies, but we don't take bets. We do fantasy sports. And then around that, we've got an NFT platform. So if there's sports going all the time, that means there's the ability to collect and stats and data and history. And so it's, then of course, advertising. So we're building this company now. It's off to a great start, got some great investors. It's moving well. We're targeted to have this thing out, coming up here in Q3. So we're excited.
Oh, that's exciting. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, why don't I move to some questions we have posted on our Slack channel, and I think we've had some great questions, and then I'll post a link to our Zoom channel only in Slack, and so if you're in there, you can come join us and ask questions in person. So I guess one question was what made you want to become a, well, I guess you were not in the programming role yourself. You were a designer, is that right? Or did you do any programming?
I mean, you end up getting your hands dirty in some code. It's the interesting thing about our now, where I'm at and where we are now is you would literally, even in the design or production side, you'd get handed some stuff and say, well, here's how it works, and go. And you'd find yourself coding things that would end up in the game and shipping, even if your title was not, engineer. I would say to be really efficient and effective, you either have to have some really good skills in Photoshop and design inside of an engine like an Unreal or a Unity, be really good with your math, or, being able to just kind of overall set a creative vision. But, depending on the product, depending on the scenario, like even now, I get my hands dirty for sure. But my background and my focus is more on kind of managing, leading vision and design and tech. And then, but you have to understand it. And it's evolving at such a rapid pace as well that, the defined tools and ways we go to solve problems is just constantly changing. So I would say the biggest thing for someone who's coming into the space, we kind of get to the root of the question, is adaptability, like not having a fear of a software, understanding and trusting yourself that, one, if you're willing to put in the time to just kind of research what you're expected to do, and then actually put in the hours of practice. Like I do this stuff, even when I'm not building things, I'm building and designing things for fun, right? I'll spend time in there modding other people's games just for the pure
cool.
enjoyment of it, right? You know what I mean? I've been doing that for forever, right? I joke with my wife that half of the features we've built inside of games over the year that I've been responsible for have been for me waiting around for her to finish doing her hair. So, it's like I didn't want I'm being dead serious with you guys. Like there'll be things where like, we're getting ready to go out. I start a game, that I have to either finish the game or, or pause it or turn it off or whatever. So I was like, we need features where we can save off and be able to reconnect at any given save point. And we end up with features like that as a result of how long it takes Sharon to do her hair.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to be your own customer, like really understand your customers as something that you care about a lot. I know.
Sure.
I know when I was working on Excel, I used to bring home a Macintosh and play with it at night after my day job just to play with the spreadsheet. So
right. Yeah, and at the root of it, you have to be willing to just, figure out what tools are needed. I mean, if someone is looking to come into the game space now, is the best time in the world ever to do it. There are a few things that you can learn, Unreal or Unity, and you'll be able to come in and be a contributor to a team right away and have a skill set that is universally sought after.
What programming languages are people using in the gaming industry now?
Still a lot of C+.
C++ and or C# or I don't know if there's
more C++, and then a lot of our guys in our team are doing a lot of React stuff as well for like our front end. A lot of stuff with React.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So like JavaScript or.
Yep. And then a ton of Unity, right? Like a ton of people being in Unity for like the smaller. I don't want to knock. So none of this Unity Unreal, if you're watching, none of this is saying one of you guys does this thing better than the other. I say that diplomatically.
Yeah.
We can do this. What I've seen in my experience has been people who are primarily doing more mobile games are going the Unity route. Not to say Unreal can't do it. Okay. People who are doing more larger, bigger blockbuster games are going more the Unreal route.
Oh, interesting.
You can't do that. But that's really where the division is. And I think there's a variety of reasons to that. But if you get comfortable in either of those two packages, and you develop enough of a skill set to be able to put things together, you will have an opportunity to work in this industry.
Yeah. I think there's definitely levels in the game design. So like, at the low level, you've got the tightly written C code, high performance, working with the GPU. But at the higher level, like you have character behaviors and scripting behaviors of characters and stuff like that. That can run at a higher level scripting language. Yeah.
I got to tell you, right. So that was absolutely, and this is how fast it changes. That was absolutely the case and can be, the case in a lot of scenarios. But what I find I'm not a fan of anymore. And I'm not, again, all this is diplomatic. I'm just giving you the honest truth. Like,
no, this is great.
Even though I know a bunch of people are out there, is that, what you'll find is you got two types of engineers. You got guys who've been around for a long time used to having to solve every problem and building stuff from scratch. And they don't want to take the things out of the crate that have been built in to solve problems. They're like, well, there's a better and faster way to do this. And they want to tap into what the GPU is doing. They want to find ways to push. And there's other guys who understand, okay, there's a company that spent a decade and a half building a tool to do this performance. Let me figure out how to build tools on top of that, as opposed to go underneath it. And those are the folks that I really like working with, because it allows us to leverage everything we're licensing, plus it allows us to innovate. And then you'll be surprised how many things with companies where those tools end up getting rolled back in. But I personally really like people who like to drive the box by using what it brings to you and then enhancing it, as opposed to going lower and to that level.
Yeah. I think, I had some friends who started a game company, and the first thing they wrote was a physics engine. Mm-hmm. But that was back in the day of, Nintendo 64. There really weren't commercial products out there to use that. Yeah. If you're starting a game company and you think you're going to write a physics engine out of the box, that's you're probably not going to be successful.
And you might be. You just might take a long time.
A long time.
Ask you why
are you doing that? Yeah. I had another friend who had an internet startup company, and his first thing, he didn't like any databases that were out there, so he decided to write his own database. And I was like, do you really want to do that? Yeah. It took him a couple of years. And he decided, that probably wasn't a great idea. Well, let's see. One question was, I think you've talked a little bit about, but a question about people who don't have a CS degree. What kind of work experience would you look for in someone who's like coming into a company? Does a degree matter, that they have a degree?
I think for me, it's about proficiency. I would say, if you look at people who've run very, very successful software companies, especially the games industry. And again, I sit on the board of some universities, so I'm not knocking education. I think we're moving into an era where it's about being have practical knowledge of what you're doing is what's going to take you far in the games business. I think the degree is going to help you on a management path until you've got products under your belt. And it's absolutely going to be a prerequisite for some companies to get in the door. There are a lot of companies who want you to be able to demonstrate your ability to contribute, especially now with, the startup environment where there's, maybe 30, maybe even 40% of the content out there coming from, startup environment or groups that are, doing outsourcing. I think if you have a demonstrable skill set, whether it's in art, whether it's being able to be proficient in level building, whether it's to be proficient in, in either digital art or concept art, music development for you can do, effects. There's a lot of different things. If you have just, and you're comfortable around computers, and then there's whole sides of stuff that doesn't require to be creative. Things like being able to do data analytics and monitor, how people are actually using your product and being able to, read through data and information and then share that information back with the creatives on the team. So data has become a huge part of decision making. There is a range of things that you can do and contribute to in the games industry, whether you are an uber creative or not, and a lot of it too. And then just general, people management. At the end of the day, being able to track a schedule, being able to, make sure people are on task, maybe being able to do that in a way where they don't get frustrated and want to turn off their Zoom, or when you get back to a physical space, they don't want to slam the door in your face and you scare people off. Like having those people on the team who can really be the glue. They understand, of course, the mission. That doesn't mean they have to be responsible for the vision. They understand where the team is trying to get. Those ultimately can be some of the most impactful people. And maybe to your surprise, at some point, those are some of the people that stick around for the longest because they can keep a team together and have them performing well. And I think that's always going to be the case, whether it's remote or it's in person. Having people like that on the team who can keep things moving and project manage, I think is essential. And then one of the easiest ways to kind of both get comfortable with the technology and software, and also kind of there's no stupid questions, is if you come in from the testing path, right? Starting with other user experience testing, because you're identifying things. You're like, well, this doesn't seem like it's right. Then you can kind of thoroughly document. And then from there, you start to dig into why it's not right. And you're spending some time on your own, and you're having time with other people, conversation with other people on your team to really dig into, well, what's actually making this thing tick? Why is it working right? What was the result of this fix? Oh, we fixed it. How do we fix it? And it could be something as simple as going through, commenting and writing down all your bugs, and then going through after the engineer has gone back and commented, or the artist, how they fixed it and what they fixed and what was broken, to learn the full cycle of identifying the problem, understanding, what the problem was in the first place and how it was solved. And then you start to get, you'll get a working knowledge and a kind of a common dialogue on what's actually happening in the software you're working on, and it grows from there.
Yeah, I'm hearing in your stories like this idea of really having the passion for what it is that you're doing, so that you really care about all those details. You really want to dig into all those things. I think that is such an important trait. We are, in our program here, we are giving people like a window into what are the basic skill sets are going to be. But there really is no replacement for like being really passionate, curious, wanting to learn how things are working, and letting your own kind of curiosity and passion drive the way that you spend your time and what you're, and also I think giving you the fortitude to stick through some of the hard parts as well. Why am I beating my head against this problem?
Right.
You have to really care a lot about it, but to kind of push through that, I think too.
Right.
So let's see. We had a question about user experience, so the traditional like UI, UX designers, for traditional, maybe enterprise software or whatever kind of traditional training that those people get. Do you think that applies into the video game area? Does it translate some of that knowledge or experience?
Absolutely. You can have your kind of core foundation of what you think should be there. One of the biggest things that you can do though to kind of get that skill set though, is spend a lot of time just paying attention to products that are done well, right? And oftentimes the product is done well when you don't realize the product is done well. That means if you're not running into friction and it's just a good experience, those are the types of products you want to go back and look at what they did and what UI choices they made. So much of what I always tell smaller developers to do is take a look at what the larger developers have done, because they have the benefit, and hopefully often they use it, but they have the benefit of a lot of resource and departments that maybe specialize in a certain thing. And so with UI UX, for example, they may have done 10 user tests by the time they roll something out, even if they felt good about it right at the beginning, just to make sure that all the data aligned, right? And you've got a younger company like, well, we're just going to recreate and do this. Like, why? There's a reason why they've gone so innovative. Of course, if you're inspired and you feel like things can be better, but one of the fastest ways you can become proficient in software development, especially in the design side, is taking in and looking at other design and really trying to look at how things flow, and then challenge yourself. If you had to design something from scratch, like there's all kinds of tools you can download, even that will allow you to quickly create UI flows on your phone or on your iPad or on your computer. Challenge yourself to look at something that exists, some app you really enjoy, break open one of those programs, and then try to recreate it yourself. Just the process of going through something comfortable, like it's like building a model, right? You wouldn't have been able to go into this place and mold all the plastic and put together a model yourself from scratch. But if you take the model out the box and it has instructions, you create it and you get much more comfortable every time you do it. Well, likewise with UI is very easy for you to be able to technically reverse design or reverse engineer that stuff, and then have tools where you can build stuff. If you do that enough times, then you get the confidence to say, well, really, I have this idea, because most people do. I have this idea and this concept. How do I make it come to life? Well, let me start by building out a UI and a flow. So even if the full code is not there behind it, you've mapped out what you want that product to be. And just doing exercises like that, you'll find yourself in a very short period of time. You may have more experience than the average entry level or early person whose job is to do that. Right. And so I think it's a big part of being able to learn. It's like you can't, sometimes people have this phobia of moving into new careers or trying to do something because, they feel like they have to be granted permission to try it, or this class or something is going to bless them with the ability. You absolutely need the skills and things, like what we're doing here at Reskill America, because it's going to allow you to kind of separate through the herd of people when you're going for a job at a corporation. It'll also give you confidence that you can contribute with a certain skill set. But so many of those skills, you're either going to learn things faster when you're in a classroom environment, or you're going to learn things faster. You're going to be able to contribute quicker if you spend your extra time literally just trying to create and make things. Like, whatever it is, like you have to apply just kind of hands-on knowledge. It's so many of the people, including, Bill Gates, for example, these guys, they got a certain amount of education, but they knew what they wanted to do. And so they just started doing it. Right. Yeah. And so I think, the benefit of this programs like these is it can give you kind of core skill sets, things you can do that will allow you to be, employed and skilled. But at the same time, you have to spend that extra passion time just digging in.
Yeah, that sounds great. We got two other questions, and I'll send out a link. But one is there's a set of questions that are around the idea, and you touched on this a little bit, of data science, analytics, deep learning, neural networks. There's this whole idea of, I was thinking about, how do you know if people are having fun? Like a lot of that is data. Like I don't know if you can talk a little bit about the role of that kind of work in the game industry.
So it's funny, I've become, cynical is the wrong word, but I've become somewhat, I like when you're building, especially when you're building a company or you're running a division or something like that, that data can be your absolute best friend in terms of, making sure people feel comfortable that their investment, their money, their time, their efforts, the features are getting you the right kind of return. So, now before, especially when you're trying to build fun, you'd build something and you hope, and you really only had a few metrics, and one of them primarily was sales, and then maybe some game reviews, but you may have a game that's reviewed poorly and sells like crazy. So you're like, well, there's some fun here, right? But one of the things that analytics allows to happen now is being able to really pinpoint and get analytics and get metrics on exactly where people are spending their time, where their pain points are. You can have this dialogue and back and forth, through just being able to see. Your customer doesn't have to tell you verbally for them to show you where they're having challenges, where the fund drops off, just based on how many hours they're spending in a certain area, where it drops off, what gets ignored entirely. And then it allows you to make decisions. It allows you to inform your team. Well, we're probably going to double down and reinvest in this section. We may have to roll this whole feature out. Doesn't mean you kill it. Maybe you roll it out and you find a way to retool it because for whatever reason it's not landing, or maybe it needs to be off on a product of its own. But data and analytics are key there because it allows you to really track exactly how people are using your product and where the pain points. But in order for that to happen, it has to be coded in a sensible way so you can actually track that information properly and be able to identify and get something out of it. And a big part of that is planning what you want to get out of the analytics. What are you expecting to learn? And then, knowing how to ask the right questions.
Yeah. So you actually know, like on a day-to-day basis, like how many people played that day, or
where they played, what part they played, where they were spending, how they were spending, where they spend a lot of time, what they were looking at. There's so much, so you will know exactly how, their experience is going based on, good metrics and good analytics inside the product.
So the other question was, if you're a web developer now, what do you have any specific advice about how to get started learning to be an indie game developer?
Yeah, I would start with an Unreal or Unity. I'd figure out what I wanted to make. I would look at, where are their opportunities? I mean, you might want to just make something just for the fun of it. Like, think of any game that you think like would be fun, and start trying to first design it out, put yourself to the challenge of designing it out, and then start making it. I mean, there's nothing for me. It's more satisfying when I'm looking for potential hires, if they've spent the time and energy and passion to try to build something of their own, not just stay in their silo. So for example, I'm going to hire an artist, of course I want to see their art portfolio. And if they're like, oh, and I've been working on this passion project, and they show me a game they've been developing, that's great to me because it shows me like first of all, they love games. And they're also thinking about more than just their silo. And those are the best people that you can have on your team, people that just don't understand their area. They understand other people's areas too, because it makes it easy for them to work with others. They understand what that handoff is like when they're delivering assets, because they know what kind of pain those people are going to experience if they hand off things in a bad state. And they also understand, overall what it's like to try to get something done. So I would say the biggest thing is, if you're already working in web development, pick an engine, pick Unity, pick Unreal, and start trying to build something for yourself, even if it's just a level. And then you're going to be so far up on other people when you go through the process of either building something for yourself or going out and going to join a team, being able to show all the work you've done without someone requiring you to do it. Yeah,
and it's so great. It's incredibly accessible compared to, I think, what it used to be in the old days. But building a game that looks really good. Yeah. Okay, so I've invited people to come in. I posted the link to our Zoom channel in the town hall questions on Slack, and I haven't seen anyone try to join us yet. Joanne, have you seen any questions go by on the comment stream that we haven't talked about?
I think there's one from Kevin that was asking about if you had any regulatory challenges with the fantasy and betting.
Yeah. So
gaming and that sort of like gambling gaming.
Yeah. So, we because we've seen the laws change so much, we are very, very, thoughtful about what we do and what we don't do, and then what we provide from a data perspective. So for us, what we do is fantasy sports there's no gray area there whatsoever. It's legal, right? So we concentrate on that, and we concentrate on building gorgeous content and really efficient data. And then we leave the legislation and those responsibilities, jurisdictional issues to our clients on the B2B side. So we provide them with a data stream that they can utilize to entertain their customers and run their betting around in fantasy sports, et cetera. But we focus on building the experience so that we can then stream the data, and that allows us to stay clear of any jurisdictional issues and having that be a headache for us.
And I'd like to say congratulations on your new venture. I hope it's really successful. You've given me a lot today. That it was just like, wow, because I followed a lot of these games like in the past. For instance, I've been playing FIFA since like '96. So it was really interesting to hear somebody who's been on the inside talking about it. Like, it's really great. So I guess one of the things like that you touched on that really that connected with me was like how the gaming industry has changed in terms of some In the past, it used to be like you shipped and there was no way to course correct. But now you have people changing things. And sometimes that could even be a problem because like with FIFA, for instance, it come out sometimes it's great. People complain too much and then they mess up the experience for everybody because they're just trying to fix all these bugs. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's interesting, man. What we know about gamers is that they'll always find a way to exploit if you leave them room. So one of the things I do like about the whole patching system is it gives you an opportunity to correct something if someone finds some, like there's been versions over the years of, I play a lot of soccer games too. So there's been versions over the year where, you come down to the corner, you launch a cross, an instant header, like pretty much every time. And you find these things and your friends don't play as much as you, they can't find these problems. And then you just have to live with it till the next version ships. Yeah. Now there's things you can do where you see that kind of issue and you figure out a way to fix it, and then update it so that the experience is balanced. The other thing is, when people are playing online, noticing that there needs to be like a common set, especially if there's a competitive landscape, so people can't, modify things in a way where they're allowed to just kind of run things up in a bad way. I think it's great. What I don't like about it, I think it's great for the customer because it allows, if you've got a team that's responsive to whatever's happening, it allows the dev team and the company to take the responsibility to make sure your experience is great. So I love it. What I don't love is that there'll be a pressure and a mentality from folks that say at the company side that'll say, well, let's just get it out the door and we'll fix it when it gets there, right? That to me is irresponsible software development, and it happens because you're like, you can patch it, so you don't put yourself through the rigorous process of how you test it, how you make sure everything is where it needs to be before and so it's a plus because you can make things better, and it's a downfall and a con to some degree because it allows dev teams to maybe be a little less responsible with what they're trying to get out the door, and that's across all games now. I've seen that.
And it was interesting that you also mentioned that because that was going to be my next question. And I'm sorry, everyone, that I'm taking all the time here, but again, because you're not mentioning names, I wouldn't do it either. But there was a huge launch last year, huge marketing campaign. I mean, some of the things that they did were innovative, but then the game came out and it was almost an utter failure. And so in terms of balancing between having not trying to be perfect, but be great, and also shipping early so that you can fix a problem, where do you see the sweet spot?
Well, I see the sweet spot in an ideal scenario. The sweet spot would be you have two teams, right? You have one team working on future product, right? And all the innovative things that are going to come next. And then you have your core team working to get something out. And I look at our development more from an editor perspective, because if you build a nice set of editors from the ground up, you can create pretty much everything you need. And then you're able to spend time just focusing on massaging the experience, not what you're building to get out. The other thing is about, a lot of this will be solved too, is if companies develop the right kind of relationship with their customer base. When they say, listen, rather than trying to convince you that we're going to give you the newest game this year, we're going to say, look, it appears that you guys all really care about this section and this is working. I don't necessarily want new gameplay in any game I'm playing if it's going to break what I already love about it, right? I may want a thing or two here that's iterative to improve, but I don't want you to rebuild my engine every year in terms of my mechanics and my physics if I like the way the game's played. I may want better and better visuals. So I think the sweet spot is about being able to, kind of reach what your core experience is going to be, and then have a really good process of your iterative development, things you're adding on there, and have a team that's focused on that. But what typically happens is you've got your core team, they rush to ship, they're burnt out, and then you got those same folks after they get a little bit of time to dust off, and now they're right back on the same thing again, and they're tired, man. And then there's just this constant death march. But if you can build it in a way where you've got your core like kind of tools team that's really building the tools and the nuts and bolts of the game, and then on top of that, you've got groups that are laying on iteration. I think that would be the sweet spot. It's just about companies getting comfortable with that level of adoption. And it really depends on the genre of game too. Some games don't require an IP license at all, so they can take their time, 3-4 years, getting something to the sweet spot. They like it without the pressure of a return. And other games, are episodic. They're tied to a show. They're tied to a sports license. And so they've got real financial pressure to deliver something based on, meeting those expenses. So, and having to get a return. So it's a balance, but.
Great. Hey, we have a question from Chris. Chris is joining us. He's been with us before. Hi, Chris.
Hey, everyone. How you doing, Mr. Ortiz? Hi, Mike. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Chris.
Good. My question is Unreal and Unity open source? And if it is there a GitHub repository that you're aware of where I could download it and start to play it with it on my own?
So if you go to either of those places, there should be like a student version of either of those that you can download and start getting your hands dirty immediately. And then they have tiered systems in terms of their pricing, and they're both a little different, but in terms of their pricing for a license. But you should be able to get your hands on both of those software, at least an entry-level version of them without a cost.
And it doesn't have to be open source for you to like use it. So like it's really set up with tooling and everything so that you can integrate it into your game that you're building without having to modify their code.
That's right. And then you can, and then you can make, tools on top of it to speak to it, to improve the way you handle certain things. But, being able to get comfortable with either of those, I would go to both of their sites directly. And then there should be like a student version you can download.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And then the second question is there a gaming community similar to, I'm a member of several different groups, SQL groups, data science groups. Are there like Facebook, Slack groups that are for new and experienced gamers?
Yeah, where do you hang out as an budding indie game developer?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. So, other place where I'm a board of trustee member is the Interactive Game Developers Association Foundation, IGDAF. And our mission is also diversity and inclusion in game development. So I would go there because then from within our community, there's all kinds of communities that spin off of that. People at every different stage of their game development journey can find communities where they can, have a chance to ask questions and things like that. But there are a lot of places out there where you can get good information. And the other thing too.
What was that called again? Interactive?
IGDAF. And
IGDAF. Okay.
Yeah, our friend Ed Fries invited me to be on the board of trustees on that company a couple of years ago, and it's pretty cool. It's also a nonprofit, but I would go there. I would check that out. And then also when you go into, if you're going in Unity, Unreal, both of them have asset stores. And so if you start going in some of these asset stores, you look at some of the asset creators and the groups around that, there'll be a lot of opportunity for you to connect with both people and reach out to them directly, because they're building their wares and sticking them up there. And, it's just a lot of folks coming from wherever. And that's where a lot of like the feedback and communication can happen. And then LinkedIn too, on your LinkedIn, there's all kinds of different game developer groups out there on LinkedIn as well. But I would start with
you said IDBAS?
IGDAF. I'm going to put it in the chat here.
Yeah.
So IGDAF. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Very inspiring. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, Chris.
Some people are asking about VR. What do you think about the role of VR in gaming? And are there different tools?
So, you can still, we've done some cool VR stuff. And I'm telling you, some of the best products and content I've seen have been from people who just decided they had a passion for gaming. And so Jurassic Park VR is probably, to me, still one of the coolest VR games. That was developed by a company called the VR Company and headed up by another former Microsoft alum named Guy Primus, really, really smart African-American technologist. And he had its team that helped develop that game called Happy Mushroom, also led by a Black Hispanic guy named Felix Jorge. I'm friends with both of these guys. I happen to be on the advisory board for Happy Mushroom. And what these, combined what they did in that VR experience was that Dave & Buster's was absolutely phenomenal. And, it allowed a lot of people to realize what the potential is for VR. And I think VR is really just at its onset. I think its biggest challenge up till now has been its penetration in terms of how many people actually have a VR machine. But I think that there's a lot of smart things that are happening to make that more accessible. And as that becomes more accessible, I think that it's here to stay for sure.
Yeah.
And
the independent headset seems like a great move. I mean, like you don't have to hook it up to your PC anymore.
Yeah.
That seems like that's going to allow it to kind of take off.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot of movement there in terms of the tech itself, the core tech that you're using that's going to open up, creation. I think you had this flood of people jumping in there because it was new and people in game development loved the new thing, and then people had to back off because the revenue opportunity was smaller. But I think to Mike's point is, as the hardware is changing, it's going to take off, and you can definitely do some dynamic experiences. So.
Yeah, I'm more of a casual gamer, but like we played a game. I think it's the Room or something like that. So it's just kind of a puzzle solving game, but it's gorgeous. Like it's such an immersive, beautiful experience. The mechanics are pretty traditional, I guess, and they're not that, but just you feel like you're like really transported into another location.
Well, I'll tell you the test for me with some of this stuff when I know that it's going to end up having a mass appeal, and not to guinea pig my lovely wife who's over here, just outside off camera. But, she's had to be around me in gaming for 20 years now. Right. And I haven't had it long before that. So it's permanent in our house. It's all my kids game too. Whenever, I know something is going to be popular, and this happened with Wii bowling. And this has happened now with VR, when her friends come over and she's like, David, can you set that up so they can check it out? I'm like, all right, we got something here. Because when we were talking about a person who does not love seeing the game sitting around, when they're up that when their friends come over, they wanted to check it out. I know it's going to have, mass market opportunity.
Yeah. It's great whether you can, like we do, cast what you're seeing from your headset onto a screen in your living room. And then so you could be playing and everyone can watch. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, I think we are going to wrap it up here. I don't see anyone else trying to join us, and I've been scanning the questions here. I think we covered a lot today. So, Juan, you're muted, but you have your hand up, I guess.
Yeah, I wanted to throw a last question. So,
okay, go. You get it. Yeah.
I think it's just around like business models, and so in the recent years, I've seen companies like forgotten the company behind Fortnite and like PUBG Battlegrounds, like being able to build like these huge revenue monsters that are just killing it with the in-app purchases and things like that. But also you have Rockstar with like Grand Theft Auto being able to dominate for so many years. Like the game is so successful, they don't even want to release the next one. And you find out that people are building new worlds on the existing one. So like in terms of like the business models and the strategy, how do you see that? Like,
we like to build something in a way where I think the free to play model is great. I think it's great because it allows people to kind of come in, and as long as you set your thresholds at a level where people can come in and they can experience it, and then they pay for what they want above and beyond that. I think that model works great because people are telling you, they really enjoy your experience. I like the free to play model. I think now with NFTs, there is so much that can happen on top of that with gaming and collectibles and things that actually have value and ultimately utility. We're doing some stuff there. And then I think there's also just the whole concept too that's going to pick up more and more, and that's subscription service based. It was popular, a long time ago with MMOs, and then it kind of went away. And I think we're going to see that come back more as people are, it's, a habit for their biggest forms of entertainment, Hulu, Netflix, different streaming platforms. I think you're going to see, more and more games as a service as well, where you're just paying a subscription fee. And then you're getting either a bunch of different gaming content, or you're getting that specific title. And then all of the, it's basically all you can eat instead of a la carte in terms of all the features and upgrades that you can get for that month. So I think we're going to see, a balance of things. And then the biggest one, with the amount of time we have left, is I think you're going to see all that. And I think if you're really smart, you're looking at a secondary economy in a market where you can allow your customer base to do things with each other, transact, craft, et cetera. And you're seeing a transaction revenue from that, but you're basically putting a tool set in the hands of the community and then allowing them to go from there. I think there's a lot of potential for that kind of model too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, David. It's just like, I feel like we're just peering into a whole world that I was not very knowledgeable about. And it's great to hear your perspective about that. And it's really exciting. And I think our participants are really curious about this whole world, and it is like a whole other opportunity for everyone. So I appreciate you telling us about it today.
No, happy to be here. Happy to help any way I can.
All right. Thank you, David. All right. So I think we're going to end the call here. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and have a great week. If you have any problems, you can always send mail to info@reskillameriCans.org. If you have problems that aren't being addressed by your instructors or whatever, but on Slack, you should be able to get the help that you need. We have more people on staff starting this week. So there should be plenty of people there to help you. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you later.